Hello. I'll close the door, please. The door. Good morning. First of all, before we start up with the protocols and also kick off the session for today, I'd like to, on behalf of the Presidential Communications team and every one of the organizers, duly apologize to each and every one of us. I think we had an issue with security this morning. We're trying to do a lot of checks, so a whole lot of people were delayed in coming. That's why we're starting 30 minutes behind schedule. It's usually not in our nature to start late. We usually start at 10 o'clock, but we're starting at 10:30, and we hope to be done as soon as we can. The Senior Special Assistant to the Vice President of Media and Publicity, Senior Special Assistant to the President of Strategic Communications, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Special Projects, Office of the Chief of Staff, other Senior Special Assistants here to the President here present, Special Assistants to the President here present, and on the side of our guests for today, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, Mr. Uche Orji, and members of his team. Gentlemen of the press, thank you for attending today's session of the State House briefing. As you may recall, in the past few weeks we've had and hosted Ministers of Works and Housing, Transport and Aviation, and this is in line with the theme for the month of July, which is the Buhari Industrial and also Infrastructure Revolution that we've been handling as Presidential Communications team. So today we'll welcome you to the 16th session of the State House briefing organized by the Presidential Communications team. Today we'll be hosting, as we mentioned earlier, the Managing Director and CEO of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. And this session would handle issues under the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, the Pidf, and other key strides being made by the NSIA under the President Muhammad Buhari-led administration. As we all know, the structure of the session is usually we'll have the first 20 minutes of an executive summary being given by the resource person. Once the resource person is done with the 20-minute session, he'll sit down, and also we'll now have the question and answer session where we'll take response from the reporters and the journalists here. This, as is our culture, we would ask that everyone stick to the particular focus areas. Thank you very much. We'll ask that everyone stick to the particular focus area for today's briefing in asking our questions. As we said, we don't have so much time, so we'll get straight to it. At this juncture, I'll invite the MD CEO of NSIA, Mr. Uche Orji, to the podium to give us a brief for about 20 minutes. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Can we have some quiet, please, in the room? All right, can we start, please? Good morning. First of all, let me thank the Office of the Chief of Staff and President for inviting us today to speak about the progress and the work we're doing in managing some of the aspects of the present effort in infrastructure, as well as what NSIA is doing across a few other subsegments that will be of interest today with regards to infrastructure. I'm going to start by assuming that there are new people in the room because I've been here a couple of times in the past, but I see a few new faces. So I'll just provide a quick background to the NSIA so that you understand what it is that NSIA is doing. I'm going to also spend some time to focus on the key projects that we're handling on behalf of the President through the PIDF, which is the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, legacy projects of the President. I'll also speak about two other things in particular which I believe are topical, which are the areas of healthcare and as well as agriculture, particularly the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, which has been a truly revolutionary program of President Muhammadu Buhari. So let me start by speaking very quickly. The NSIA, you all know, was set up and is owned by the Federation. The ownership of the NSIA is split into three. Federal government owns 45.8% of the NSIA. The state government owns 36.2%, local government owns 17.8%, and the FCT 0.16%. So this is a truly federation investment vehicle owned by all three tiers of the government. And it was set up and operationalized. The law was passed in 2011, operationalized in 2012 to do the following things. One is to obviously work to enhance infrastructure in Nigeria, create a savings base for the future generations of Nigerians, and also to provide stabilization support in times of economic stress. Next page, please. The NSIA has over time received contributions, initially $1 billion, and then nothing for quite some time until when President Buhari started to make extra contribution to the NSIA. So altogether, the NSIA has received $1.6 billion from the government and has earned returns that has put NSIA's assets now at $2.3 billion. So over time, it's earned coming up to almost $700 million in returns from its core investments. But in addition to all of this, NSI also now manages the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, to which there has been significant contributions totaling $650 million initially, $265 million later on. And more recently, the Abacha funds that have been recovered, $311 million, have also been transferred to the NSIA. All of these are dedicated to the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund. So I need to be sure that you all fully understand that. So the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund at the moment had fully committed capital of about $1.7 billion. And this is really now focused on these projects. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Second Niger Bridge, Abuja Kaduna Road, and the Mambila Hydropower Project. East-West Road was originally on that list, but subsequently an arrangement was made where it was taken out of the PIDF and returned to the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. So the PIDF projects are now down to 4 projects: Lagos-Ibadan, Second Niger Bridge, Abuja Kaduna Road, and Mambila Hydropower. Again, I know this is an area of interest, and I'm going to focus on it today to give some highlights, show you the progress we've made, and give you updates on the challenges and time to completion of some of these projects. Next page, please. I'm not going to bore you with this. You've seen our earnings results in the past of the NSIA. I'll just say 2 things on that. One, it is a prudently run organization. We're very risk focused in terms of managing risk. In the 8.5 years almost of running NSIA, almost 95 months, we have hardly had one down month. We've been profitable just about every single month of the organization. So it's really something that is focused on risk management. And look, we spent some time several times in the press talking about what is driving our profits and all that. Last year was a very good year for the NSIA. So far, this year is looking very solid as well. But I was more cautious about this year because of the inflationary environment globally that is happening. So I'm not going to take too much time on the Future Generations Fund because, like I said, in the first half of the year, during our earnings announcement, we spent plenty of time with the press to explain what the earnings were. But last year, so far so good, this year tracking along the lines of our expectations. Now let me speak to the infrastructure fund. Now this is where I think it has to get really interesting to the things you can relate to. NSI's investments in infrastructure has to pass 4 key tests. The first test is that it has to be something of nationwide importance. It has to be something where we can attract both local and international capital and also be able to make commercial returns and social returns, and the legal environment has to be conducive. For PIDF, it checks all these boxes. It's the president's program, we're managing it, but these roads have nationwide importance. We are looking to bring in other commercial capital contributors, both pension funds, who are interested in investing in the project. And also we're looking, this project will be commercial. Okay, so they're going to be profitable over time because roads are economic assets, the economic corridors that can always be made to be profitable. And I explained to you how we're going to achieve that because that's the only way they can also be maintained after they've been built. And the regulatory environment around the PIDF, and I will emphasize again, is the President's Legacy Program. We are just here as managers of those projects. So it's really important that you understand how the legal environment around the PIDF works. This will be run in a commercial manner. There'll be certain aspects of it from trailer parks to all kinds of things that will be very profitable for the NSIA. Just in terms of the footprint of our investments, you can see on the map quite a number of areas where the NSIA has made most of its investments. Now, enough about the NSIA. Let's switch to the President's Programs, PIDF. The Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund was set up in 2018, and it was set up with an objective of attacking certain areas where we have been as a country stuck. There were some projects that have been in the drawing board, some as long as 40 years, 50 years, no movement on those projects. The President decided to isolate them from the current process and create a new funding mechanism to make those projects move faster. Second Niger Bridge, for example, has been in drawing board since 1976. No movement on the Second Niger Bridge until the PIDF was effectively set up. Lagos Ibadan Expressway, similar type of circumstances. Many of you know that road very well. I remember driving that road as far back as the 80s and the 90s. Same story. Needed a lot of rework. Abuja Kaduna Kano Road, again, these are projects that have been stuck. Everybody knows we need to do them to make sure that we drive economic activity a bit more effectively. So these things have been stuck. Mambila, of course, again, another one that's been stuck for a very long time. So PIDF was set up as a mechanism that creates a vehicle that takes government contribution, NSI's contribution, and opens it up to investors to come in as a way to make sure we finish these roads on time. And the progress has been, quite frankly, even if I must say so, quite impressive in the last 3 years of the PIDF being set up. A lot of money has gone into these roads as well. Lagos Ibadan Expressway is split into two sections. There's Lagos to Shagamu, which is handled by Julius Berger. Then there's Shagamu to Ibadan, which is handled by RCC. Then there's Second Niger Bridge, which cuts across Asaba to Onitsha, so Delta and Anambra states. There are 3 phases to it. Phase 2A, 2B, and Phase 1. Phase 1 is what we're handling now, which is the 10.9 kilometers of road plus of bridge plus approach road. Then there's 2A and 2B. These are further access roads stretching back to into the Benin-Asaba Expressway, as well as all the way connecting the Owerri interchange and going towards Obusi for those who know the area. Phase 1 is where we're focused on at the moment. We are 62% completed on Phase 1. We're about to start Phase 2 and Phase 3, 2A and 2B. But the bridge can be operational once we finish just 2A. The rest of 2B not necessarily that operational. So you will see the progress that we've made on that. So 2A, Phase 1 is the first project that was given to the NSIA to handle. The expected completion date is 2022. And I think from what I have seen and what I'm going to show you, I can confidently say that that will be completed by 2022. Second, Lagos Ibadan Expressway, the same argument, the same objective. 2022 is when we're expecting to complete it. And then Abuja Kano Road, initial scope, should be completed in 2021. But as you know, the scope of the project has been changed now significantly in terms of reconstructing the entire road. So that will push out on the completion date on the Abuja Kano Road. But I can tell you that Kaduna, Zaria, Kano end will be done. Abuja Kaduna is where we're now going to, you're going to see some real activity in terms of funding that starting soon after, and I believe we'll be solving most of the issues outstanding that this month by August, I believe. So I'm very confident with where we are on all these roads. So let me start with Second Niger Bridge, please. I don't know how many of you in this room went with us last year when we invited the press to come and see what's happening, but I will encourage you to have a close look. And I would have loved to have shown you before and after. But this is where we are. Last time we visited this bridge, only one side of the decking was done. Now both sides of the decking is almost completed. I've been told by contractors that you will see a bridge by the end of this year, i.e. the last piece of the decking will be completed. Now, let me tell you something about this, and many of you may never understand this as a feat of engineering. You see each of those pillars, from the seabed, they run 18 stories deep, each of those pillars. So for a long time, when PIDF was implementing this project, many people sat back and said, nothing is happening, nothing is happening. What you haven't seen is that each of those pillars are going 18 stories deep from the seabed. Now, this water is also a very fascinating piece of hydrological engineering. And here's why I say, between dry season and rainy season, the peak of rainy season, the water levels will rise 4 stories high. It's muddy, it's a lot of silt. Many of you also don't know Nigeria very well, but 70% of River Niger runs under Kebbi State. So when you get to Kebbi State, you don't see it, it kind of disappears. But by the time it comes out through and becomes a river, it's silt, it's mud, it's heavy water. So this is really a phenomenal piece of engineering because it needs to withstand high flood, high tide, and all that. Please go back to the bridge. So I just think it's important you understand this because, I hear all kinds of talk, and I think if you don't understand engineering, you probably never understand what the challenges are. So this is the progress, 2018 and today. This is, like I said, truly, in my opinion, something quite transformational. What you see on the bottom right corner is the access road. Again, the entire length of this project, this phase 1, is 10.9 kilometers. The actual water crossing is 10.7, and then the approach roads make up the rest. So where are we now on this? Again, like I said, the phase 1 will be completed 2022. We're starting work on the access road, which takes us, again, for those who may or may not know the area. If you're coming from Benin, you have to, before you get to Asaba Airport, you bypass into a new road we're constructing. So the road will bypass Asaba completely, bypass Onitsha, and then come out going towards Owerri. Now, there are 2 other small bridges that will take you back into Onitsha and Asaba. I thought to show this because I think, again, this has been something that's been in works from when I was in primary school. That was a very long time ago. And finally, under this administration, through the PIDF, is getting done. Let's go to the next one, please. Again, another difficult project, Lagos-Ibadan Express. Let me start by apologizing. I know the next month or 2 will be very difficult for those who are using this road because there are many diversions being built at the moment to enable them complete a, what's that thing called, like a flyover? Yes. Exchange. Okay, that's engineering term, interchange or exchange. But the layman we'll call it flyover. So I think the point here is that there is something that is going on that road that is going to cause some real pain in the short run. Now let me explain to you why this road is a bit difficult, right? It is the most trafficked road in the whole of Nigeria. 40,000 vehicles every day pass this road, and there's really no alternative. And so anytime you create any little diversion, traffic backs up a lot. Yeah, so it is the fact. Every day, almost every week, I get a call from somebody screaming they've spent 3 hours, 4 hours. Look, it is because work is ongoing. It will be completed at a certain point soon. Like I said, July 2022 will be done. But in the short run, I've been told by the contractors that the next 1 or 2 months will be very challenging, but that's just to help them complete the interchange. Again, one of those that is, and I've heard a few things I'm going to refer to very quickly. I don't always respond to things that go around, but when they make it to the mainstream press, it's time to really correct some impressions. This road is 6 lanes going from Lagos to Shagamu, and then from Shagamu to Ibadan becomes 4 lanes, correct? Good. Now, Julius Berger, I think where we are on the Lagos to Shagamu end is 70% completion. So what is left is now 30%. We lost a little bit of time during COVID thing because people couldn't move back and forth, but the current estimated completion date for the Lagos-Shagamu end is July 2022. But But please, if these things overrun by 1 or 2 months, don't say MDNSIA, say July, therefore let's hang him up. It might, there will always be, a bit of slippages here and there. But at the moment, I don't see any reason to worry, but I always make sure that I manage expectations and manage risk, because we don't know some of the things that we might still yet encounter. There are a number of things the President has asked us to do, and we are in the course of doing those things. The first thing is to build a new trailer park in Ogere. Because part of the challenge we face at the moment is when you build these projects, you have these trailer parks, the trailers come and stand on the road. These are expensive pieces of infrastructure. They're dripping petrol, they're dripping engine oil, they're dripping diesel. If you understand a bit of chemistry, you understand that diesel, petrol, they melt asphalt, and this is what starts to eat up the road, okay? And so the appeal right now is that people should not please park their vehicles on the road. They destroy the roads that have been built. So this will be done. So there'll be a trailer park built in Ogere that will now help get those trailers off the road. We've got the approval of the President to start that. Recently, we're in communication with the government of Ogun State, who have offered us their own existing trailer park, which should be reconstructed. The second thing that I think will be done, and I think when this is done, these roads will be tolled. All of them were told. But there are commercial opportunities for everything from concessions, trailer, warehouses along that line that I think will also be things that will create real commercial opportunities. But this is where we are on this road. Next one, please. Abuja Kaduna Kano. Right. Abuja Kaduna Kano, initial scope was to rehabilitate 92.5 kilometers, but we've changed to full reconstruction of the entire road. Something very funny came up. Somebody said it was the most expensive road in the world, blah, 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 and it's not. Okay, let me start by making sure I correct that impression. It is not. When you look at road construction, what you look at is cost per kilometer per lane. You don't just say cost per lane. It doesn't work like that. Cost per kilometer, it doesn't work like that. Lagos-Ibadan is 6 lanes. This is 4 lanes, okay? When we have done the math, the numbers are very clear. Lagos-Ibadan, because of the terrain, more expensive. This one, because of the terrain, per kilometer per lane, not as expensive. It's just a very long road. It's 375 kilometers. Lagos-Ibadan is 127 kilometers. So those are the things I need you to be very, very aware of, okay? Why do we need to reconstruct the road? Because the existing road is gone. It's been built a long time ago. This one would be rebuilt and it'll be 20 years warranty. Similar to what we have on, don't you all enjoy driving on Abuja Airport Road? That is the level of infrastructure that this country requires, and that's the sort of thing that is being done. I mean, if you look at Lagos-Ibadan, the depth of excavation is 1 meter deep for some of these roads. So this is to make sure that it lasts for a very, very long time. So that's what's happening. Now that we've changed the scope from 92.5 kilometers to 375 kilometers, where, the completion dates will shift. The cost will also expand, but per lane per kilometer is actually done as cost competitively as possible. So this is where we are. I mean, I just not too long ago drove the Kaduna Zaria Kano end. For those who are driving it, you can tell the quality of what is being done. I think the road markings have started. Have they done it? Okay. They finished the road markings, and so you start to see signages will come up and you start to see the quality of the infrastructure. But once these things are done, we can take them off the budget for a while, and then it's now about handing it over to a concession company to run it and maintain it. So this is the PIDF road projects. I'll just make 2 comments on the ones that Mambila, we've started a couple of things. We're doing some value engineering, looking at the scope again of Mambila. That's kind of where we are at the moment with Mambila. But once all that work is done, I believe we'll get the directive of the President as to how best next to proceed. But we're prepared to make sure that that project also gets done. So that is where we are on the PIDF roads. So next year will be a very busy year of completions and commissionings of different parts of some of these roads. Next. Now let me switch from PIDF and speak to the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. Okay? I'm going to speak about 2 or 3 things in Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. The first thing is that the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative has been truly revolutionary. It has achieved a number of key objectives. First objective is that we have now revived the domestic fertilizer blending industry. Before PIDF started, okay, before it started, we had, I remember fertilizer price, I remember in 2016 was as high as 13,000 naira a bag. It was scarce, government was spending a lot of money on subsidy, and there was no domestic blending industry at all operational. There were 4 working, they were running at less than 10% utilization. Post-PIDF, we've achieved the following successes. Number one, the number of domestic blending plants involved in the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative have now gone from initially, started with 7, got to 11 in first year. We now have 47 blending plants. We had 30 last year. We have 47 now as part of the fertilizer initiative of the president. Again, a completely dead and moribund industry. Result is now it's been revived. That's number one. Number two, the cost of fertilizer then was 13,000 naira. The president in the first year brought it down to 5,500 naira. And of course now it's gone up a bit. I'm seeing price at 7,500, 8,000. Still, I mean, with inflation and whatever else has happened, that's quite reasonable. I'm seeing about 8,600, 9,000 naira. Fine, fair enough. But the point though is that the market has now become domesticated. Okay, we used to buy everything completely finished. Now we are bringing in only raw materials that we don't have in Nigeria, and we're getting the local markets to work. So 4 companies initially before we started, 47 now working. Price was 13,000 naira, price dropped all the way to 5,500 naira, and then we created domestic employment. Third point, on the PFI, even with price at 13,000 naira in 2016, there was scarcity everywhere. In the first year of PFI being implemented, we had 7 million bags of excess products in the warehouses. So today, nobody here is complaining about fertilizer being an issue. The program has been restructured completely again, one more step, but that is to ensure that the gains of the initial restructuring are maintained. Let me go on to a few points I want to make on PFI, because I think it's really important. In the first phase, can you go to the phasing of PFI, please? So this is the number of blending plants. Like I said, go back, please, go back. We had 11 in the first year. By the end of the first year, like I said, 4 were working in 2016, but by the end of the first year, we had 11, we went up to 47. This is the distribution of the blending plants across the country. Again, completely moribund industry, revived under the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. Next page, please. No, next one. Next. No, go back. Okay. Leave it. I'll explain what is on this page. Sorry, we didn't realize that we're going to present to a whole group. We thought we're going to just give you a piece of paper. But let me explain what's going on here. Okay? 3 things. We've made some changes this year on the way the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative is going to work. And I want you all to listen because this is very important. There are 3 or 4 phases to the PFI program. Phase 1 was a phase where we actually sat down with fertilizer blending plants. The NSIA ran the program for them. We brought the raw materials to them. We made them we did the transportation, the logistics, they blended for a fee. Phase 2, they now start to take responsibility. They put up their own guarantees, put up their own cash, and then they do the transportation themselves. What do we do then as NSIA? We bring in the raw materials for them. Because we are the NSIA, we're able to negotiate better pricing for the entire industry. So they get raw materials at the discounted rate, but they're now handling most of the responsibility themselves. When this restructuring was implemented, people were a little bit concerned that it may not succeed, but it has. At the moment, the blending plants have put up cash and guarantees of 160 billion naira. This is something the government will have had to carry, but now they're carrying it themselves. They're doing transportation, will have cost us 45 billion naira, they're carrying it themselves. And guess what? Nobody's complaining about fertilizer. The industry is starting to work. Phase 3 is SSIA now getting involved in upstream production of the components. So you saw the announcement with Morocco to build an ammonia plant. That ammonia plant is going to help us produce what is called diammonium phosphate, again with OCP of Morocco. This is one raw material that we import a lot. That plant, we're going to break ground this year and hopefully finish construction within the next 3 years. Phase 2, there's phosphate in Sokoto, not yet tapped. We are going to invest in making sure that that phosphate is beneficiated and used locally. Phase 3, there is potash in Bauchi running all the way to Gombe, to Benue State. Again, not tapped. These are the things we're going to spend time on. Ultimately, when the PFI program is completed, you will hardly see us import anything because all of these things are in Nigeria. So why did we spend decades importing finished fertilizer when we can make them locally? Again, this is something I think needs to be really spoken about because I have seen through it and the fact that this is truly revolutionary. And I'm going to stop with one last thing, healthcare. 20 minutes is up? Okay. Let's go to healthcare. Right. 3 things we've done in healthcare. First of all, the NSI has a healthcare investment company. And the healthcare investment company, we initially wanted to take on all these challenges in healthcare, but we realized that if you take it all at once, you're probably never going to succeed. So we decided to do two things. First of all is showcase an area that is of interest to Nigerians, and we took cancer. And we went to the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, LUTH, and said, can we partner with you, take over your cancer center and rebuild it? And that was the first thing we did. Second, we now built two world-class diagnostic and radiology centers in Kano and Umuahia. I'm happy to report that those centers have been successful. Initially, we hired a management team from South Africa. It didn't work out. We fired them. We started again. We built our own management team. At the moment, these three firms are now running, and again, I find it really uncomfortable to discuss profits and discuss healthcare. But they're running according to our plan. The healthcare, the LUTH Cancer Center is doing quite well, and all these firms on an EBITDA basis have become really profitable. What is our objective now? Objective now is to build out 20 more of these centers across the country. We're starting this year with 3. Next year, I think we're going to look at something around 7 next year, and then another 10 the following year. So there'll be 20 of these centers built across the country. And it's everything from cancer to radiology to diagnostics. And then the flagship program is our world-class hospital that we're building here in Abuja. That will be a center for advanced medicine. So these are 3 areas where in the role we have played at NSIA, we believe there has been some significant infrastructure investments. We've talked about the roads, we've talked about fertilizer, we've talked about healthcare. There are many other things we can talk about, but I'll probably stop here and take questions, if any.
I know that usually we don't clap, but I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you. At this juncture, we'll allow the MD to sit down, and we'll open up the floor for questions. As you can see, he has spoken on every issue here. Please make sure you keep your questions according to these particular issues or any other issue relating to the NSIA that he has mentioned. So we'll start with the first phase of questions. We'll take 3 now, and then we'll take 3 on the next phase. He'll take the first 3 first. So I'll start with Mr. Felix, Timothy, and Yemi. Then the next phase will take the rest. James, Felix, Timothy.
My name is Felix Ono. I'm from Reuters, World News Agency. How has the global risk environment affected fund performance compared to what the fund returns, what you expected from the return? And number 2, what is your view on the dollar exchange rates at the end of the year, and how has the currency risk affected or influenced fund allocation and your performance? Lastly, can you give an update on the infrastructure company set up with the CBN? Have the seed capital been invested? If it has, how much?
Okay, we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll answer them together.
All right, my name is Timothy Choji. I report for Voice of Nigeria. My question is health related. You just spoke about your intervention in the healthcare system. Please, what are you doing in form of intervention? 1, for the National Hospital here in Abuja. 2, for the State House Clinic. I'm asking this because there are a lot of noise going out there about the president's medical checks abroad and things like that. Thank you.
Morning, sir. My name is Yemi Adebayo from AIT. I have just 2 questions. The first one is, I want to find out from you, sir, because in the course of your text, you were outlining the achievements and what the NSI has been doing. I want to find out from you, are there no challenges that the NSI is faced with as we speak today? Then secondly, you are quoted as saying that the second Niger rig you completed in 2022. What gives you this confidence, considering the situation of things in the country? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. So let me start with the first question, which is essentially what's going on with the performance of the fund this year versus last year. Okay. Last year was a good year for the fund. I also did say to you that past performance is not always an indicator of future performance, and I was very cautious about 2021 versus 2020. In 2020, we returned 160 billion naira in profits, out of which, out of which 108 was core profit, and something like 51 was exchange rate related, because we hold positions in dollar, euro, sterling, and Japanese yen, the investments we have in other parts of the world. So we need to convert them to naira. And exchange rate has gone down by 30 naira. That created 51 billion naira of gain. But 108 came from the core investments that we made. This was 2020. And it was a good year because we saw many things that were going on. In investment, you buy when people are selling, you sell when people are buying. It's as simple as that. Buy low, sell high. It sounds easy, but it's always also difficult to have the courage to implement it. And I think what my colleagues and I decided to do was in the middle of COVID, when everybody was selling everything, we started buying. And that turned out to be a very profitable strategy for us last year. This year, we've been a bit more cautious. I believe quite a number of things, from inflation to the high valuation of stocks, will make that it is almost difficult to find real value. But I will also say that the first half of the year has been okay. I hate to give you a number for the first half of the year and then second half of the year things turn around, because I think things will be a bit more challenging second half of this year. They will be. And that's just because there are just too many variables that the world has to really deal with. Third wave of COVID, high valuations of stocks, China, cryptocurrency, there are all kinds of things. So we're more cautious. But I will tell you though, I have been pleasantly surprised by our results in the first half of this year. Very surprised. And if things don't turn out negatively, like I fear, then I think this second half of the year will not be something to be worried about, actually. I think we might end up doing something close. Better than I expected, that's for sure, but maybe perhaps as close as what we've done in 2020. So far, so good. But I'm thinking that 2021 will not be, because, again, we still have August. I haven't even seen July performance yet because the numbers, the month hasn't closed. So we still have August to the end of December. So I will stick with my earlier statement, which was 2020 was good. I'm cautious about 2021. I don't think it will be as good. But so far, so good. First half of the year was good for us. But second half, I don't know, because there are just many variables that the world has to deal with. We are market participants. We invested in private equity and public equity, so these are things that drive our performance. On exchange rate, quite frankly, and NSIA, because we have investments across 17 jurisdictions, we deal with 17 different currencies. I ask you which exchange rate, right? Are you talking about euro versus dollar? Dollar versus what? See, so in terms of dollar exchange rate, dollar has been, you're talking about dollar to naira, right? That's an answer that the central bank will give you. And the reason is because I don't control the variables that drive that. So we don't have a view at NSIA at all. We don't. And we don't have a view just because, like I said, 40% of our assets is in Naira, yes, but we report in Naira as well. So for us, it's really neither here nor there. But if you really want to talk about what's happening with the exchange rate, you're better off talking to the central bank. And I believe the governor gave a very interesting perspective on Tuesday. I listened to his speech on Tuesday, and I think you'll get a sense there. Currency risk you speak to with regards to our projects. Look, here's how we look at it. NSIA is a long-term investor, okay? So we are investing over 20 years. And I'll speak to three things when people speak about currency risk. It is a risk the whole world faces, okay? Not Japanese yen, the UK currency sterling at the beginning of COVID, at the point was about $1.10, $1.12. Today is $1.40, £1. Okay, so when we speak about currency risk, everyone tries to make it look like it's a Nigeria exclusive problem. It's everywhere. Have you looked at what's happening to the Kenya shilling or the Japanese or the Ghanaian cedi? So one thing I can tell you for sure, currency volatility will remain an issue across almost every investment jurisdiction we're involved in. But as long-term investors, here's what we look at. Can we, over the next 10, 15, 20 years, make enough returns to hedge this? The answer is yes. If we don't, we will not invest. Okay, so commercial and social returns, as I spoke to you, as one of the key things we look at. It's so important to it. So you need to step away from the short-term noise as an investor and look long-term. We're building Lagos about the expressway. Do I think that road will make money? Yes, it will. Do I think the value will go up? Yes, it will. Do I think currency will be volatile? Yes, they will. But the point at the end of the day is that that road will be something that will be very profitable. Healthcare, the same theory. So if as an investor you keep looking at the short-term challenges, you will not do anything, right? You will not do anything, and you'll never be an investor. And I think this is really why this is the skill we have at the NSIA, quite frankly, is to be able to look past the noise and make the right investments. Infraco. Infraco is a vehicle that was set up by the NSIA, and I chose deliberately not to talk about it because I would like the central bank to speak more about Infraco, okay? Because the way it is structured, NSIA, Central Bank, and the Africa Finance Corporation are investors in Infraco. The seed capital has not been invested yet. Has it been raised? Yes. But you know, the central bank recently announced that we have appointed 4 portfolio managers, or we're in the process of appointing 4 portfolio managers. They've actually announced the names. So look at the central bank press release on those portfolio managers who will then manage this fund. I think it's important to explain to you, and there's a murmur about, okay, what is the role of NSIA versus Infraco, how's it going to work? Let me address that, because I think this is really where you're getting at. NSIA, Infraco, all these vehicles will sit side by side because the need in this country for infrastructure is, lack of a better word, gargantuan, right? It is significant, and we need as many hands on deck as possible. I've always said that, look, we need many managers running the same strategy because at the end of the day, this is actually a people skill business. There's one MD, one CIO who has to make sure he reviews, approves. That is a bottleneck. But if we can create vehicles where many more people are involved, we can attack more of these problems at the same time. Do you understand? So somebody can take on gas infrastructure. Somebody can take on telco infrastructure. Somebody can take many other things. So that's how we want to make sure that all these vehicles are firing at the same time. Because otherwise, we're going to have a situation where we sit there for the next 30, 40 years trying to solve one problem. So the more people we have running at these things, the better for the entire industry. NSIA will sit on the board of Infraco. NSIA is an investor in Infraco. NSIA will also continue to make its own direct investments. Because if you don't know the size of this country is 3 times the United Kingdom in terms of size. So the problems we have are plenty. We need as many people as possible involved. And this is why NSIA is backing Infraco. Because we need more people, more capital, raising capital externally, bringing capital domestically. All of this have to work together. Otherwise, we will not succeed as a country. Healthcare. Look, let me speak to you about healthcare. It's very simple for us at healthcare. Again, one of the things we tell ourselves at NSIA is we don't have the money to solve all problems. But let us start by demonstrating 1 or 2 successfully, and we'll bring funds from elsewhere. Let me give you the answer that's NSIA-centric, because I can't speak to National Hospital or State House Hospital Clinic. We, on the basis of the little success we've had with the cancer center in Luth, I know, by the way, there's also another investment that NSIA was part of, the Elacare Hospital. The one in Lekki, the brand new hospital that was built in Lekki. Many of you don't know this, but NSI is an indirect investor in that clinic and that hospital. We've seen that healthcare can work. We've learned the lessons of what it takes to make healthcare successful. And I'm hoping that those lessons are translatable to other areas. We believe now that our 20 programs will be across the country. I think in the first 3 or 4 that we're going to be driving now, one is in Bauchi, one is in Sokoto, one is in Asaba, another one is in Ibadan or something like that, Enugu, correct? Right. So we're attacking it across multiple parts of the country. Also in healthcare, recently we've partnered with Global Citizen. Global Citizen is just a group of individuals who want to give back to society, and the NSIA to create something called the Nigeria Solidarity Support Fund. The objective of the Nigeria Solidarity Support Fund is they're going to go raise money. As a new general manager has been hired, whose job is to go and solicit and get capital from external parties, internal parties. They're going to be attacking primary healthcare centers across the country, 774 of them. Okay? So there are all kinds of tentacles that are involved. And like I said, the Center for Advanced Medicine that we're building here in Abuja will also be a showcase. And also on healthcare. I don't know if you've seen the recent announcement made by Afrexim Bank. Again, something to build Center of Excellence in Abuja. So our hands are in every piece, but we don't have too much money. Remember, we didn't get a lot of money. Yeah? So part of what NSI is also doing is to make sure that it's managed prudently. This is why you see me talking about profits. We're generating profit and reinvesting it. Okay, so we're limited by the capacity that we have. So we're not going to stretch ourselves too thin because we haven't got all the capacity to attack all sorts of things. But I believe all of these things will make significant impact in the country and reduce medical tourism. We saw it with Cancer Center. When the lockdown happened, people couldn't travel. People started going to our cancer center in Luth. Patients' count just went up. This is why we need to build these things here, because there's a limit to trade. There's a limit to how much you can import. There's a limit to how much you can travel. We saw that limit last year and this year. So we must build these things locally. So regardless of the race, currency, this one, we must do these things now. Because guess what? It's a source of foreign exchange as when we do them. People coming to our cancer center come from Togo, come from, because we're cheaper than Ghana. So we're getting patients coming from outside the country. So that's kind of the feeling we're getting, and I like what we're seeing there. Challenges, plenty, plenty. And what gives me the confidence we'll finish this in 2022? But a couple of things. First of all, under the PIDF, we have a clear funding mechanism. Yeah? And I think that's very important to understand. Why did the president create PIDF? At a certain point, you do not see more than 8%, 5% of the budget of any project in a year. So if you're getting 5%, 8% allocation, when will you finish? Let me tell you when you finish, 40 years. And that's if you're honest about what you're doing. Here's what happens. When you get 5%, the road, that 5% is sent to mobilization, demobilization. You do the little bits of stuff. By the time you get the next allocation, the one you built is deteriorated. The president said enough. Not serious if we continue to do this. We must make sure we create a funding mechanism, take these roads, finish them. And that's what's happened. So the funding mechanism is clear. That's what's giving me confidence. Last year, I didn't see COVID coming. But when COVID came, it kind of affected things a little bit. But but there's still real issues, right? Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with, enormous feats of construction. So sometimes these things can be a little bit challenging. But from what I have seen so far, I have no reason to change the fact that phase 1 of the second Niger Bridge will finish in 2022 next year. You've seen the pictures. By the end of this year, I'm hoping that the contractors keep to their plan to couple it. So when you drive, you see a bridge. Now what is left now is the access road, approach road, all those things that will be done. So yeah, the same thing for Lagos Ibadan. The reality is there are real construction on site challenges, but I'm very confident that we are on the funding mechanisms for this project, and this is why PIDF has been very successful.
Thank you, sir. My name is Tony Ailemen. I write for Business Day. Sir, the choice of projects that NSIA invests in, what influence your choice of projects, sir? That's my first question. Because I'm asking this question given the fact that there could be certain, probably political influences that may, twist your decisions. And at the end of the day, it moves to the second part of the question, which is sustainability. How do you intend to ensure that these projects are sustainable? Then lastly, sir, Mambila Power Project. That project has been on the drawing board for a very long time. And is it possible for us to put a proper cost on how much that project will cost the federal government? And when exactly are we expecting that that project will take off fully and be completed because of the importance of power to the economy itself? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Anu Emmanuel. I write for AFP. MD, I want to ask you this question. I know that sometime in 2011, when the idea of setting up the SIA began, I had on different occasions from the former Minister of Finance, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, saying that Nigeria needs to save for the rainy day. And then government pushed, and then we saw an initial investment of $1 billion. And then, like you said, later on, when this administration came in, there was an additional $600 million. Now, I'm just concerned. When you say save for the rainy day, you've explained to us here other programs like the Residential Infrastructure Fund and then the Fertilizer initiative. These are separate from the SIA, as I understand from your presentation.
Yes.
Now, from the $1.6 billion that you have now, you've told us you've made investment across different areas. Now you're making returns on these investments. Are you concerned that this fund is not been increased? There is no additional savings? Because what it means is that the 3 tiers of government have not made it important to make additional savings. We hear last year that the federal government was saying they needed to pull funds from the pension funds, that is about 12-point-something trillion now for funding infrastructure. Now, if we're not saving for the rainy day, do you think we're still driving in the right direction with regards to saving with SIA? Thank you.
Yeah, MD sir, my name is John Bosco Abakuru. I write for Vanguard. My question is on Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. I don't know if I heard you correctly, sir, that nobody complains about fertilizer now. If I heard you correctly, sir, I want to first ask, is there any mechanism to monitor distribution and pricing of these products? Why did I ask this question? Even this morning, in my place, Imo State, the fertilizer I set for was 15,000 naira. While for the palms, I was told 28,000 naira, the one they called MOP, red color. So this 5,000 naira, 7,000 naira, that it was fixed, was it across board? Any mechanism to monitor the distribution and pricing? Because in Imo State, precisely, the product is very costly. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can I take?
Morning, sir.
Sure.
I'm Bolaji Gundele, and I write for the Nation newspaper. You spoke of the roads under PRDF being told, like the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, you said they'll be told when they are done.
Sure.
Now, we used to have tolled roads across the country, but an administration came and abolished it because they found out that instead of Nigeria getting rich, individuals were getting rich. Do you have a plan of making it work this time around? One. The number two, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, I'm kind of confused about the contract figures in how much it will cost. I would be very grateful if you can give the accurate figure for that project. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Good afternoon. My name is Raliet Adeneko from Classic FM and the Beat Abuja. My question has to do with the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative and the looming food crisis in Nigeria, especially with regards to food inflation. What is the NSIA doing to ensure that states actually collaborate? For instance, the Kebbi and the Lagos State collaboration. What are you doing to ensure that such collaborations still exist and it's promoted? Then secondly, your intervention during the COVID-19. We've just seen South Africa, a South African company, a pharmaceutical company, being given the access to produce vaccine in their country. Why can't NSI actually take such, what's it called, initiative to actually intervene in production of vaccine in the country? Thank you.
Can I take this one? Yeah. All right, thank you very much. These are all very good questions. So let me start with choice of projects. The things that influence our choice of projects, I spoke to them at the beginning. First of all, before we do any project, it has to have nationwide strategic impact. Okay, so the NSI is not a private funding mechanism for you to do your own private business, no. It has to be something that we can say, even if it is sponsored by the private sector, sponsored by NSIA, it has to have nationwide impact. Okay. Number two, we don't invest alone. NSIA, we must come along with either local or international investors. And the reason is because it's always good to have somebody else as a reference point to ensure that you're pricing it properly, okay, before you make an investment. The third is that it must be commercially viable, and also make sure we balance commercial viability and social impact. So it's not just everything that's about making money. It's also about making sure that you make a social impact. But first of all, for it to be sustainable, it has to be profitable. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If it's not profitable, it requires subsidy. If it requires subsidy, it's not going to work for a long time if it's run privately, right? And finally, the legal and regulatory environment has to be conducive, right? So, and I say that because there are certain aspects that we would like to intervene, but some laws need to be passed. Some new directives need to be given to make sure they work. So these are the four things that, first of all, influence what we will look at. I give you, there's a bullseye picture there. That bullseye shows all the sectors we're considering. The ones in the center circle are areas we said, okay, sitting with, but don't forget we have governance. NSI is not run by one man. We have a board. The board has committees that look at external investments, committees that look at direct investments in the country. We sat down and we said, okay, we will start with the following sectors: agriculture, healthcare, power, gas industrialization, motorways, or what you call roads, and the financial markets infrastructure. Right? Because don't forget, if we had $100 billion, we'd take on all of this at once, but we don't. So you have to manage the resources you have versus the project opportunities that you have. The projects in that bullseye, the agriculture, are areas where we will sponsor projects, we will develop projects, we'll invest in projects. Now that doesn't stop us from looking at areas outside of this core area, but what we will not do in, say, free trade zone or industrial parks or real estate even, gas pipeline mining, is we will not sponsor, we will not develop, we will only invest. The difference is that if the things in the bullseye are the ones NSI will create a vehicle and own and develop it ourselves and all that. So that's really the, so to your question is answered by this picture here, right? 4 points that they must cross, and if they cross, we now look at whether it is something that is inside the bullseye or something that is outside of that bullseye. We've had this as our guide since the beginning of NSI, but every once in a while we add certain things or remove certain things in that area. So I think that answers the first question. This is what drives our choices. You asked me about sustainability. Again, I spoke to the fact that they must be commercially viable. Right? Once something is commercially viable, then it's sustainable. Otherwise, it fails. So we are not going to these roads without any clarity as to how we will get the money back. Trailer parks will work. Concessions for eateries along the road will work. Tolling is an option. Media, if you put any media on the road, you pay us. Gas pipeline, telecom pipeline, power pipelines. People that have built on our right of way will pay tenements. It's simple. This is federal government property. We have laws, and we must respect those laws. If you park your trailer, when we say you shouldn't park your trailer, we'll tell you pay. So these are very, very simple things. These are laws about how everybody else runs motorways profitably in other parts of the world. And the NSI is in the process of taking the full concession for this. That's how it's going to operate. And if you do that, and you have a 20-year investment horizon, and you have 40,000 vehicles a day going Lagos Ibadan Express or 20, how many tens of thousands at Kano or Second Niger Bridge, you can actually work as an economic model that will make these routes viable, so that and make them sustainable. Mambila. Question is, how much will it cost? I said to you at the beginning with Mambila, the president directed that we hire a company to do value engineering. The value engineering will take the initial cost, look at the final design, make some changes, and take costs down. We did that for Second Niger Bridge. Second Niger Bridge was supposed to cost over 20% more than it was initially designed for. But when we started the value engineering, we said, look, this is unnecessary, that's not necessary, remove this, remove that. This is an overkill, this is an over-design. So that's what value engineering really is. At the end of the day, we come up with something that we're all happy with, and then we should take costs down. So the same thing is happening with Mambila. We'll see. Sometimes the numbers don't change, sometimes they change. Sometimes we'll even say, listen, we'll do a few more things, but let that value engineering finish. And once it finishes, I believe the presidency will advise Nigerians of what the cost is. But I think you're right. It's been a drawing board for a very long time. I did my youth service in 1990 in Bauchi, and I remember Mambila was a big topic back then. But today, finally, I think we should all be happy that finally there's some real movement on Mambila. So when exactly will it take off? Like I said, once we're done with the value engineering, I believe that the president will give us directive how to proceed. But he's very keen, from what I understand, and from the directives I've been given, to make sure it starts as quickly as possible. On no additional savings, listen, my job is to manage what I've been given to manage, but you're right. It's quite unfortunate that when the time was possible to save, we didn't invest and save. But I'm hoping that we'll continue to show some commitment to it. Having said that, the reality is, I will personally say I'll commend the president for even investing what he did in the middle of a recession. Right. But I'll speak to something else that is also another way you grow the Sovereign Wealth Fund. There's cash contributions, but there's also asset management. So another conversation we're having is, are there assets that are not working well that can be transferred and used as vehicle to revive and create wealth? This is what has happened in Singapore. Singapore has two sovereign wealth funds. One of them is GIC. That one they put cash. Another one is Temasek. There they put assets. So these are conversations, all of these conversations are being had. So there are other ways to actually grow this type of fund. If you look at Lagos Ibadan Expressway, Second Niger Bridge, Abuja Kaduna Road, if those concessions finally get into NSIA and they're run profitably, that is assets that will grow and they can be monetized in the future. So let's look at it as a different way of growing the assets. Unfortunately, we are where we are. But I don't really like to go back and start crying over spilled milk. We just need to make progress now. When we can, the encouragement is to invest and save. When we cannot, let's take assets that we have and make them work better. Pricewaterhouse has said something about several hundreds of billions of dollars of debt capital, which is asset in uncompleted projects, abandoned projects. We talk about all kinds of things, Alscon, Ajokuta. All of these things need to work. That's how the nation creates real value. We cannot continue to have assets not working. PFI. So, mechanism for monitoring pricing. Very interesting. You say that. And let me speak to something very quickly. Talk about 28,000 for MOP. We don't do MOP. You're not supposed to buy MOP from us. We do NPK 2010-10. Okay, NPK 2010-10. So anybody that is not buying NPK 2010-10 is buying a specialist product for however they want to blend it. NPK 2010-10 was recommended by the Ministry of Agriculture as a base product for all Nigerian farmers. Any other blend, any other mix is not what we produce. So I can only speak to NPK 2010-10, which was designed as a core product for fertilizer across the country. So if you're doing something special and you need something different, that's a whole different conversation between you and whoever is selling you it. But there is a whistleblower number that is monitored by Fertilizer Producer Supply Association of Nigeria. You should call them. We used to monitor those, but since we've handed it to the industry is now in charge of ensuring that there's no racketeering. So I will ask you, on the bag, look for FEPSA number. Whoever it is that's selling it to you, report them. Report to the Ministry of Agriculture, right? There's an agreement that was had with the industry around pricing for NPK 2010-10. So if you have one or two areas where people are trying to racketeer, do let us know, okay? Because listen, like I said, it's a big country sometimes. You can't monitor every little aspect of it. But in the main, and we monitor what's going on in the industry because our job now is to bring in raw materials, but we still pay an interest to ensure that it's not being abused. And so if that is happening, do let us know. Report to FEPSAN. I believe in the bag of fertilizer, there should be a whistleblower number to report that somebody is racketeering. But also be very careful about anybody who is trying to adulterate or do things like that. Do report them. I was very pleased to see what the State did 2 days ago. They rounded up some people who were trying to do things like that. Report to your state government. This is not right. The president took a lot of personal initiative in negotiating discounts with Morocco, discounts with Russia to bring in the raw materials we don't have. It is not for one or two persons to try and racketeer. That would be illegal. That's economic sabotage. And let me also remind you all, the president has ordered EFCC to look into these things. It's a clear directive. So please report them because the EFCC has directive and mandate to make sure that they are actually investigating these matters. Toll roads. I think I've answered largely the question from the nation. How will it work? Okay, the question he asked was people were privatizing it, right? So let me put it this way. When the concessions are completed and the roads are operational, NSIA will own the operating company. NSIA, I started at the beginning to tell you, is owned by everybody. Federal government, state government, local government, FCT. So every Nigerian is a stakeholder. This is not a private entity you're giving the tolling. NSIA will have a vehicle that will toll and maintain and manage these roads on a commercial basis. It's up to NSIA whether to hire an operator or to create their own operatorship, really. But at the end of the day, this will be something that's owned by the country. And NSIA, you know, we publish our quarterly accounts, we publish our annual accounts. I come here and I give accounts to everybody. So if there's an issue, something that's going on, feel free, like you've done today, to challenge me and push back. But this is how the formula will work, a little bit different from the last time, and let us hope that we get it right. But I believe we will. Food price inflation. Look, madam, sorry, the food price inflation is a global problem. I don't know if you read a recent report by CNN. Food prices globally has gone up 40%. That's according to CNN in dollar terms. And I think there are just so many reasons why this is happening. But I will say the following. The NSIA will not solve all problems. The NSIA has taken on, at the direction of the president, Fertiliser to fix. Recently also, the NSIA invested alongside a Dutch company called UFF to create a farm, Novum Farm, in Nasarawa State. 3,000 hectares. I just was there 2 weeks ago. At a certain point, we should try and take some of the press to that farm. It's maize and soy that they produce, and they produce feed as well. Really interesting in terms of the yields we're getting, and just to show, it's a 50% company owned by NSI and 50% owned by a Dutch South African company. And we have people who are operating it. We're hoping to do more of those. We've actually now signed up to some concessions in Kaduna at Gurara. Again, 50-50 NSI and the Dutch South African company. And then we're looking to do similar things in Edo State, and I believe either Imoa or one of the other ones that are also part of the areas we're looking at. We're looking at the Ebonyi State. So if we can get this right, we'll raise a fund around it and do more. The truth about it is we need to crop more as a country. We need to crop more. And I think our population is rising. We need to address it. But food price inflation is a global thing at the moment. Everybody's talking about it. It's also happening in Nigeria. But the bit we're doing is through the Fertilizer Initiative, as well as our own direct investment at the NSIA. I think that's the last question. Did I miss any? Which one? Excellent. That's a good question. I knew I missed something. The total contract sum is 311 billion naira for Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Yeah, that's the total contract sum as announced by the Ministry of Works. What's ma'am? Yes. Can you please pass the microphone to the lady, please? Intervention, yeah. I'm not sure I heard the rest of the question.
I actually asked about the COVID-19 intervention, having to say, yes, Hassan, thank you.
Okay. If you want to go through all of what NSI is doing, I think we need 2 days, yeah? So let me speak to you about what we're doing in other things we're doing in healthcare. First of all, South Africa has a far more advanced pharmaceutical industry than we have. Let's start with that. There's a deal signed with a company called Aspen, with Johnson & Johnson, and then they're now being used to produce vaccines in South Africa. So let's accept the fact that they have a superior infrastructure for healthcare manufacturing than we have. Okay? Having said that, here's what the NSIA is doing. I announced at the end of last year that we are going to invest in pharmaceuticals, and that includes vaccines. The first step of what we did was to engage the University College London to do a research for us about what to do and how to do it. So University College London finished that research at the beginning of this year, and they've made some recommendations to us at the NSIA. It was a piece of research that started at the end of 2019. So we started this before we knew there was going to be a problem. And we've come to the conclusion that we will have to invest both in drug manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, as well as vaccines. But let me also say this. COVID is a very important area of focus now. But let's not neglect the fact that there are also other vaccines that we need. Polio, measles, okay? These are all vaccines that are needed in the country. All I would say is watch the space. I've had several meetings, I've had several trips on this matter. I've been at it for almost a year. We will do something, and we'll do something major in pharmaceuticals. And it is everything from vaccines for the very basic stuff, to antibiotics, to all kinds of other medication that we require. Look, we cannot depend on trade for too long, okay? And the reason is because what came out of COVID was that trade has its limits. Some things are just too strategic to be allowed to be dependent on other people. During COVID, India stopped exporting drugs. We depend on India for most of our drug importation. China stopped exporting pharmaceutical ingredients, which is used to make drugs. So these things are things that are very essential to produce in this country. So we will get involved in that. The second thing that came up, looking at the whole COVID situation, is the lack of logistics for cold chain or cold storage. We can't take the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. It's difficult for us. So we need to build out those infrastructure pieces. So these are the things that NSIA are looking at, specific areas to intervene. But I've seen what was done by Aspen and Johnson & Johnson and South Africa, which is great. The truth is, we are looking at doing some of those things, but we also have to accept the fact that we do have lots of other fundamental pieces of investment that we need to make first. But make no mistake about it, pharmaceuticals is front and center on the NSIA strategy. Yes. Exceptional question. I like that question. And the reason is because NSIA, like I said, we can sponsor, we can co-develop, we can just invest. We're looking at all three. The more difficult ones, we'll do it ourselves. The easier ones, which is to look at some companies that already have existing infrastructure. I traveled many of them in Agbara, and I'm like, okay, you do have some infrastructure. Maybe we can work with you. Maybe we can take a piece of your area and build something on your land. I mean, there are just so many options, because sometimes some of these existing infrastructure are just so archaic and so far behind, it's better to just build a brand new one. Like we did with Cancer Center. We just simply stop everything, demolish it, start afresh. That's what happened in Luth. We demolished, we started afresh, rebuilt it. So these are all things we need to do. But we established the fact that it's important. So all three strategies are going to be there. We will sponsor some directly, we will co-develop some with partners, and we'll invest in third-party projects. We will do that, and I'm certain we'll conclude something in healthcare this year. So we're trying to raise a $200 million fund, not just us. there are other investors that have indicated interest. So the documentation of getting the third-party funds we're going to work with various third parties is ongoing. There's just a whole team working on that. These things are not so easy, and it's more difficult also because of the environment we find ourselves in. You can't travel, you can't meet people. It's just a little slower than I'd like it to be. But I'm just as frustrated about it as you are, which is to make sure we can move very quickly because we've been on this since 2019.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Uche, for that brilliant presentation. Thank you so much, gentlemen of the press, for coming. We continue to do this on a weekly basis, and we hope it will shed better light on some of the great work of the president. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon.